For my final project, I decided to study the importance of storytelling in our lives, especially in theater. Throughout my research, I have discovered several different reasons as to why storytelling is so vital in our everyday lives and how just a simple tale can weave a beautiful story into a show that millions of people can relate to. Some people may believe that storytelling is unimportant or irrelevant, but if I have learned anything in my life, it is that story is to our survival as human beings. In my research, I thoroughly dove into this idea and proved how important it is to our society. I used examples of in-class studies in our textbook, novels I have read, an interview of a theater professional, statistics, and impersonal importance to emphasize the meaning behind the storytelling in theater, how it is considered to be an art, and how it relates to the things we learned this semester. This project made me realize a very important thing. One thing that we studied in class that I truly felt applied to my research was the bringing together of community. This quote on my first slide relates to the idea of a personal narrative. We lose ourselves in our everyday life journey, but we also find ourselves in it. Through a short encounter, goal, and accomplishment, we find a piece of ourselves and sometimes lose a piece. Theater gives us the opportunity to do all these things and more. The art of theater is an innovative art. Things are continually changing and evolving for the better. I believe that when people tell their stories, they bring their own sense of creativity or authenticity to the way of recalling their memories, which I think is absolutely a beautiful thing. It makes us all unique and it teaches us to cherish certain moments in our lives. It makes us think of the people and things that mean the most to us, and that is exactly how I feel sitting in an audience. Story is also sometimes a therapeutic source for many people, which makes theater, in turn, possess those qualities as well. These reasons are also what make theater so impacting to an audience. They enter the worlds of these characters and get wrapped up in all their drama, heartache, and struggle, but also their happiness and achievements along the way. That is to be human, and theater depicts that through all of its magnificence. Theater has many interesting qualities that it possesses, but I think three of the most important qualities are tradition, society, and worldview. People consider it a tradition to go to the theater maybe once or twice a year to share in these characters' stories. But as they do this, it creates a society within all the people working there or the consumers, etc. And while they're watching these shows, they get to see the worldview of not only the writer but the performers, and I think that's such a unique quality that theater brings to the table. I got the chance to study folklore this past semester, and this quote I felt directly applied to what I was trying to research about storytelling and how it applied in theater and our everyday lives. Tradition is the process of dissemination and transmission of culture that shows continuity over time and space. It is a learned behavior that contributes to a group's identity. It includes an interpretive process that embodies both continuity and discontinuity. It is not bounded, given, or essential. It is a collective resource for creativity. Most importantly, it connects the past while building the future. If I think of shows in terms of the past and think of my interpretation of these stories and myself as the present, then my children and their stories and the shows they will see will be the future. All the different interpretations show differences in the way of life or even just the smallest details. A society is an organization of groups of people. Theater creates society to everyone involved in making it what it is, such as consumers, employees, and so on. We come together as a group and make memories together. It creates a new world for us, and we become a community with the people and the attractions before us. Throughout my project, I decided that I wanted to show personal importance as well, to see how this project related to me, so I could dive into it with more understanding. I decided to include photos of some of the most important theater things that have been in my life. And one of the first things that I came across was Rent. Rent was one of the first musicals I ever saw, but it was the movie, so it wasn't a stage performance. But almost immediately, I fell in love with all of the music because I wouldn't, and I fell in love with the characters. And Rent has always held a very special place in my heart. This past year, I read a book called The Storytelling Animal. Throughout the book, the author Gottschall talks about why storytelling is important in a human life and how it can be therapeutic or how it changes us. And I also found this book an amazing source for what I was saying, because this book gave me so many valuable reasons. But one thing that I picked out was this quote: "Memory is not reliable. Eyewitness testimony can be different from the actual events that occurred. Even the person that it happened to can experience a faulty technique entitled false memory syndrome. It is when a person has had this memory in their mind for so long that the mold changes with time. Details become different and some memories fade. In the case of my studies, I found the differences were between two people that experienced the same event. A lot of the stories that are shared through a performance are told from a certain point of view. I am not saying that one person's point of view would be better than another, but they are different. People remember different details of different experiences, and there is no fault in that. In fact, that gives us more to learn from. All audience members take something different away from every performance that they see, even though they're seeing the same show, and it constantly changes us and the world we live in. Theater is such a powerful thing, and that is absolutely why. And these reasons are clearly evident of what Gottschall has found in his research." One thing from our textbook that I found really interesting was the very beginning of our textbook, where it talks about theater being in every area of our lives, whether we notice it or not. And this quote from the beginning of the book depicts that directly. "Performative elements are present in every society, no matter how complex or how unsophisticated the culture may be. These elements are evident in our political campaigns, holiday celebrations, sports events, religious ceremonies, and children's make-believe, just as they are in the dances and rituals of primitive peoples." This quote shows us that everything we encounter in our life can be used in a performance setting. Every aspect of life can be shown through theater because a performance in theater is a real-life experience. I chose several different quotes from a YouTube video that I got the chance to watch because I felt that without several pieces, it didn't quite make sense. But in the YouTube video I watched, she discusses why visual storytelling is important for the performing arts directly. And she says, "Studies show audiences are shrinking, expenses and prices are rising, and subscriptions and donations are declining." But at the same time, she says, "It seems impossible to show socioeconomic factors, audience demographic changes, and shifts in technology above this noise. But with visual storytelling, narratives can help you cultivate your audiences." If we take all of this into account, we realize exactly what a show has the power to do. Through theater performances, we have the power to change the world. Theater subtly, but also abruptly, addresses the issues of our society in a way that doesn't seem so bombarding to its audiences. In fact, in some cases, we end up laughing at the uproar of some of our everyday issues have all conjured up. The difference here is the way the issues are approached. The way the theater brings the issues to attention sometimes helps people to sympathize and actually strive to making a real difference. In the video, she wraps up stating that 83% of customers are willing to pay more when they feel an affinity for this organization. The theater creates that affinity for its audiences through its ability to tell a story. I got the chance to watch and read through an interview of a theater professional during my research, and he was talking about why story is so important to teaching in general, or learning in general, and how he uses it for his teaching, and how that applies to theater as well. He said, "Stories actually carry meaning. As Leigh mentioned, I run the graduate directing program at Columbia, and I usually teach through stories. I learn something and I tell the students the story of how I learned it, like you shouldn't do this, and somehow the stories carry the meaning with emotion, because without emotion, you learn nothing. A performance is always bringing various emotions to the forefront. By bringing these emotions to an audience, we are also able to create a way for them to empathize. We change their lives because we remind them that they are not alone. They relate, and that creates a bond between audiences and the characters they are watching every night. It is a magical trick that theater people possess. Performers are entrusted to do what we can to benefit the members of an audience with this technique." I felt in order for my research to be truly reliable and to be able to truly talk about this topic, I needed to use personal experience as well. So I decided to do an interview with my mother. I decided to get her to tell me some stories about some of the best moments in her life, or some of the hardest. And most of the stories she told me were happy or funny. And one unique part of the interview was towards the end of the interview when she was telling me how much me taking the time to hear her stories or to relive stories that I was present for meant to her. It created a connection between the two of us, and I found that really, really unique. And I find that applies to storytelling for everyone, whether you know the person or not. One specific thing that she mentioned toward the end of the interview was that she believes that part of what sparked my passion for theater and music and shows are the experiences we had in Disney World growing up. As she was telling me this, she told me how it affected me so strongly had inspired her. She told me following the interview how proud she was of the way I strove for dreams and continue to do so, and she wants to possess the confidence of that in her everyday life. Theater does this over and over again for its audiences. People walk out of theaters changed in ways that are impossible in any other setting. Everyone tells their stories from their own unique perspective, and I saw that depicted beautifully through each piece of my research. I read a book this past year entitled Haroun and the Sea of Stories. In this novel, a boy, Haroun, and his father go on a magical journey of sorts and discover the absolute power of storytelling. Repeatedly throughout the novel, Haroun says to his father, "What's the use of stories that aren't even true?" This quote frames the central crisis of the novel, which is what role does story play in culture and society, and what happens when it no longer has power. This book is written for young adults but entertains all ages for various different reasons. Rushdie creates a world in the story that's being destroyed, which is a symbol for the way that narratives are often destroyed in a quest for power. We have trouble telling our stories every day because other things going on in the world consume people. The ultimate answer is that story gives meaning, and through performance we can share our meaning for being. One thing that we studied in class that I truly felt applied to my personal studies was the bringing together of a community. Theater itself creates a community, but personally I found that in my life, theater created a sense of community or family for me, and also created a bond between me and everyone I encounter in the business after hearing various interpretations of so many stories I hold near and dear to my heart. And so, in conclusion, all performance tells us something about society, culture, a person, and how their mind, the human mind in general, work. Theater has been an academic for a very long time. It includes fiction, beliefs, and storytelling. It is vital and persistent in our lives. It is broad, contemporary, ancient, and still common. Theater is interconnected with tradition, community, creativity, and innovation. It is a display of art in our communities. This project gave me the opportunity to go in depth of the studies we have done this semester. It has given me the chance to apply everything we have learned to a real-life situation and then analyze how it relates to what I learned. It truly has created a connection for storytelling and me that I will not soon forget. I grew up with storytelling being a big part of my life, and this project has given me the chance to remember why it is important to me and so many people around the world.